girl said he's still inside the barn. The barn had burned down. Years ago, the girl's toes were black with dust as she stood at the edge of the lot. Her dress was torn at the hem and stiff with old smoke. She raised her hand and pointed at the empty square of ground where the barn had stood. "He's still inside," she said. Her voice did not shake. Her eyes were hollow, the way embers look after they cool. She said it like a fact that did not need anyone's belief. The sheriff tried to laugh and could not. The sound came out thin and died in his throat. He kept his hands on his belt and looked past the lot to the leaning fence. "There isn't a barn," he said. "Hasn't been for years." The deputy stood beside him and watched the dirt as if the dirt might answer. A few folks lingered near the ditch and pretended not to watch. "You hear me, kid?" the sheriff said. "There's nothing here." The girl kept pointing. "He is," she said. "He asked for you." The badge lay warm against the sheriff's shirt. It felt like a small iron pressed to his ribs. "Who asked for me?" he said. "Say a name." "He didn't say one," she said. "He said the word that means you turn the key." "Sheriff," the deputy said under his breath, "she could be fishing for money." The girl looked at the deputy and then back at the sheriff. "I don't want money," she said. "I want him out." The lot was a scar that would not heal. They had raked it, seeded it, waited, and nothing green took hold. A woman with a rag in her hand came slowly up the road. The widow's walk had not changed since her man went to the fire. Her chin stayed high like it hurt to drop it. She stopped when she saw the girl pointing. "Get the child off that lot," she said. "This isn't play." The girl didn't look at her. "It isn't play," she said. "Hush," the widow said. "People here have done their grieving." The girl turned her palm down over the dirt. "No," she said. "They packed their grieving in. He's still in there." The deputy took his hat off and fanned himself with it, even though the day wasn't hot. "You want me to walk her home?" he asked. The sheriff didn't answer. His breath felt as if it had to pass through cloth. "What did he say to you?" he asked the girl. "Say it the way he said it." She blinked once, slow. "He said it's dark and tight, and he doesn't want to be forgotten," she said. "He said the door chain is hooked and he can't lift his head." The widow's jaw worked. "That's enough," she said. "That barn burned clean." The sheriff stepped until his boots cracked the ashy crust. He remembered where the doors had stood, where winter animals had cried, where men stacked heavy boxes that didn't rattle. He had told himself those boxes held feed. He had told himself a lot of things. "What else?" he said. "What else did he say?" The girl's mouth tugged like she was holding back a smile. It wasn't joy. It was a relief. "He said you were late," she said. "He said you looked away when the smoke bent." "Sheriff," the deputy said, "we can clear the lot and call this done." The sheriff crouched and rubbed a pinch of ash between his fingers until it smeared. "Have you ever heard a barn breathe?" he asked. "No." The deputy said, "Me neither." The sheriff said he wanted it to land like a joke, and it didn't. He looked at the widow. "Have you ever heard anything out here?" She lifted her chin. "Only my own bones," she said. The girl said, "He knocks when the wind stops." "What wind?" the deputy asked. "There's no wind." The girl tilted her head and listened. The ditch grass stood still. A truck far off changed gears and the sound fell away. The lot felt like a room with walls you could not see. The sheriff felt it press on his ribs. He spoke to the empty space. "Tell me something only I would know," he said. The girl said, "He said you still keep his knife." The sheriff's hand moved before he could stop it. It twitched toward the pocket, where a bone-handled blade slept behind his badge. He put his hand flat on his shirt and held still. The widow looked from the girl to the sheriff and back, and something tired in her eyes gave way. "We paid," she said. "We put water on that fire till our hands blistered. We took down what was left. We prayed, and we wrote, and we did not say those names." The girl's voice softened. "He doesn't want prayers," she said. "He wants light." The deputy blew out a breath. "We should go," he said. "There's dirt and old talk. That's all." The sheriff stood where he was and felt heat that wasn't there creep into his boots. He turned to the folks by the ditch. "Go on home," he said. "No show today." They didn't move. The widow said, "This town hates a scene." The girl dropped her hand and stepped onto the lot, like into a waiting room. The sheriff reached and touched her shoulder. "Don't," he said. She looked up at him. Her eyes weren't empty. They were scraped clean. "You left him," she said. "I was told to clear the road," he said. She held his gaze. "You cleared it," she said. "The fire did the rest." He let go of her shoulder. "All right," he said. "Show me where." She pointed to the far corner where footing stones made a low line under thin dirt. They walked to it together. The deputy followed a half step back with his hat in his hands. The widow came last, slow, like the ground might give. "Here," the girl said. She knelt and put her ear to the earth. "I can't hear anything," the deputy said. "You have to be quiet," she said. "We're quiet," he said. "No," she said. "You have to be quiet in your chest." The sheriff closed his eyes. He was not a man who chased visions. He believed in locks and keys and paper that said who had a right to stand where. He put his palm on the ground and felt a faint pulse, the way you feel blood in a cut. He did not want to move his hand. "You feel that?" the deputy whispered. "I don't feel anything," the widow said, and then a soft tap came from below. The girl smiled. "There," she said. "He's patient." The sheriff stood with his boots sunk in the dry edge of the lot, the girl's voice still hanging like smoke. He waved her off in front of the townsfolk. "Going home," he said. "Barn's gone. Been gone a long time." His tone was sharp, meant to cut. But when he turned, his eyes dragged back to the blackened foundation, as if his body refused the lie his mouth carried. The deputy walked beside him as the crowd scattered slowly, muttering low, "She got to you," the deputy said. The sheriff didn't answer. His jaw worked, chewing something that wasn't there. "Sheriff," the deputy pressed, "you saw it too, didn't you? You felt it in the ground." The sheriff's silence was heavier than words. He spat in the dirt and kept walking toward the road. "You won't even say no," the deputy said. "That's worse than yes." The sheriff stopped and looked at him with eyes that dared him to push again. "Drop it," he said. The deputy swallowed but didn't back down. "People talk," he said. "They've been talking for years. You can't keep holding it in like it ain't there." The sheriff's hand rested on his belt, not near the gun, but near the ring of keys that rattled soft when he shifted. "I said drop it," he repeated. His voice cracked like a dry board. They reached the porch of the office, the door hanging loose on its hinges. The sheriff went inside first. The deputy followed, closing it behind them. The room smelled of paper, dust, and the old wood stove that hadn't been lit since spring. The sheriff sat heavy in his chair, the leather creaking. The deputy stayed standing. "You think ignoring it makes you clean?" the deputy asked. "You think silence doesn't stain?" The sheriff looked at the desk, at the stack of reports that never mattered. "You talk too much," he said. "That girl's just a kid running her mouth. Don't give her power by listening." "She wasn't guessing," the deputy said. "She knew about the knife. She knew about the fire. She knew about him." The sheriff's eyes narrowed. "Her daddy worked the mill. Folks tell stories in that mill. Nothing stays buried when men need something to whisper over their lunch." The deputy leaned forward. "That ain't how she said it. She didn't repeat gossip. She spoke like she'd been told." The sheriff slammed his hand on the desk. The ink bottle jumped and tipped, bleeding across a sheet of paper. The deputy flinched, but didn't move away. The sheriff wiped his hand down his face. "You don't know what you're poking at," he said. "I know enough," the deputy said. "I know you can't sleep. I hear you at night on the porch. I see the light in your window till dawn. If nothing's wrong, why don't you rest like the rest of us?" The sheriff's silence filled the room again. It wasn't calm silence. It was a grinding one, a silence that pulled the air out until you felt your chest locked tight. The deputy shook his head. "Your silence says more than words." The sheriff looked out the window at the lot across the street. The ground was bare, cracked, with weeds that grew fast, then curled dead. It was soil that refused life. He knew because he had tried planting himself, tried putting seed and water, and watched it rot in place. He felt the weight of the girl's words circle back. "He's still inside." The deputy spoke softer. "You were there, weren't you?" The sheriff closed his eyes but didn't answer. "You saw what happened," the deputy pressed. "You know who burned it." The sheriff rubbed his thumb across the scar on his knuckle, the one he got the night of the fire when the heat split the air and he grabbed for a door chain. He hadn't thought about that scar in years, but now it burned like fresh. "You don't understand what that night was," the sheriff said finally. His voice was low, like gravel pulled through water. "It wasn't a fire. It was ordered. It was men telling you to look away. It was women praying to keep their homes standing. The children were told to shut their mouths." The deputy blinked. So you admit it then. You saw him. The sheriff shook his head once. I admit nothing, he said. And you'll repeat nothing. The deputy stepped back. That silence of yours, he said. It doesn't protect anyone. It damns us all. Folks are cracking under it. That girl is just the first to say it out loud. The sheriff stared at him until the deputy looked away. He picked up the badge from the desk and held it in his palm. The tin looked dull, worn. This is the only thing between them and the truth, he said. If it breaks, they all drown. The deputy whispered, maybe they should. The sheriff didn't answer. He put the badge back, pushed the ink-stained paper aside, and leaned back in his chair. His silence filled the room again, heavier now, pressing on both of them like a hand that would not lift. The deputy finally turned and opened the door. You'll have to talk sooner or later, he said without looking back. Silence won't hold forever. The sheriff sat alone, staring at the black foundation through the window. He wanted to believe his silence was armor, but the truth pressed against it, steady and patient, like a knock from under the ground. The sheriff stayed in his chair until the sound found him, a slow, stubborn knocking that didn't match the clock. He stared through the office window and saw the source across the road, where the widow lifted her arm and drove a nail into a warped plank at the edge of the burned lot. Quit looking, he told himself, but his eyes kept drifting back as if the ground tugged a string tied to his chest. He stood, shut the door behind him, and crossed toward the fence. The widow didn't look up. Are you here to help or judge? She said. He stopped a few feet away. Neither, he said, keeping order. Order, she said, giving the word no home. She set another nail and struck. Plenty of order when men burn what they build and pretend the ashes are clean. Fence needs straightening, he said. It does, she said. Everything does. He watched the board tremble and settle like a held breath. The girl waited by the ditch with her hands behind her back, bare feet braced in gravel. You heard him again, the sheriff asked before he could stop himself. I never stopped, she said. He doesn't like talking when hammers are loud, but he keeps breathing. The widow turned then, eyes narrow with warning. Don't bring that talk to my fence, she said. Men don't forget memories. I'm a girl, the child said. You live among men, the widow said. So you carry their punishments. Two farmers slowed their truck when they saw the small knot of bodies by the lot. One leaned out and called, Are you fixing that thing or marrying it? The widow kept hammering. The sheriff raised a hand and told them to move on. The truck rolled away with laughter that didn't belong to the day. From the store porch, old men watched and pretended they weren't. A whisper crossed the street like a leaf in a shallow ditch. She's at it again. The girl? The fence? Both. The sheriff rested a palm on a leaning post. The wood was rough and slightly warm, like it stored heat nobody wanted. You plan to finish the line today? He asked. I plan to hit what I can, the widow said. Plan's the wrong word. The girl stepped closer to the black foundation, eyes locked on the low stones that framed the ash. He wants me to tell it plainly, she said. He says no more tricks. The widow lifted the hammer again. You tell nothing, she said. You keep your head down and your voice soft. The hammer stopped midair. The widow's voice thinned. You don't know what the barn was. I know what he said, the girl replied. He said there were boxes and a chain, and he did nothing wrong except trust. The sheriff breathed through his teeth. Names, he said. You got any? He doesn't call them, she said. He says names make doors. Doors to where? The deputy asked, arriving from the alley, hat in his hands. Down, the girl said. The deputy nodded toward the sheriff. Are you going to show us a door? A crooked slat popped free. The widow pried it and held it like a question. Straighten it, the sheriff said. I like it. Crooked, the widow said. It tells the truth. She said it again and drove it until the head shone flush. There, she said. Even lies look neat if you hit them enough. The girl spoke softer. He asked if the key still hangs on your hook. The sheriff's hand twitched. What key? The one for the side door that stuck when the wind blew wrong, she said. The deputy looked at him. You tell her that? No, the sheriff said. The widow did not blink. A pair of churchwomen crossed the road, skirts brushing dust. They didn't stop, but their words slipped out and stayed behind. Prayer meeting tonight. For what? For quiet. A boy on a bike skidded to watch. Mama says the ground here is cursed, he told the girl. Mama says your mama should keep you out of it." "My mama can't keep me," the girl said. "Where is she?" the boy asked. "Gone," the girl said. He lifted his feet and let the bike drift, not sure how to answer a shape that big. The widow set her hammer down and wiped her wrist. "Listen to me," she told the girl. "You talk like you don't care what follows, but there is always a follow. Words walk. They come back with friends. Men who own land think they own the stories told on it. They make women pay when stories grow legs. I'm not afraid of men," the girl said. "You will be," the widow said. "You won't admit it, but you'll feel it at night, like a door that wasn't locked." The girl stared back. "You were afraid and stayed quiet." "I stayed alive," the widow said. "Alive isn't the same as clean," the deputy muttered. The widow's look emptied him of courage. "You ever keep a house with no money and a man who drinks his anger?" she said. He shook his head. "Then hush." The sheriff's gaze slid to the stones. He remembered the way light jumped that night and argued with itself. He remembered a hand on his shoulder, a voice in his ear, a promise that order would return if he obeyed the right men. He wanted the memory to blur, and it refused. The girl stood very still, as if listening through boards. "He says you stood right there," she said, pointing without looking. "He says you smelled his hair burn." The sheriff closed his eyes. "He says you used your keys and still didn't lift the right chain." "Enough," the widow said, the word sharp. "You think saying what hurts is healing. It isn't. It draws blood and invites flies." "Silence draws rot," the girl said. "Rot draws men with clean shirts." "Those men feed children," the widow said. "Those men eat first," the girl answered. From across the road, the storekeeper called, "You folks need anything?" "No," the sheriff answered. The storekeeper nodded too fast and vanished. The street felt full of ears. The widow took up the hammer again and turned her back, hitting with a steady rhythm until wood swallowed metal. "Last warning," she said without looking. "Don't drag the barn into every sentence." "He won't stop," the girl said. "He says talk is the only tool left." "Then he should have kept more friends," the deputy said. "His friends turned the latch," the girl replied. "He was locked in," she went on. "He kept breathing until the door heated. He called until his throat felt like ash. He says you heard him." The widow's shoulders went rigid. "I heard wind," she said. "I heard old boards. I heard my husband say it wasn't our business." "And you believed him," the girl said. "I kept my house standing," the widow said. "That's the work given to women here." "Men give that work," the deputy said. "Men take everything else." "He's not wrong," the widow said, and her face softened. "I did what I could." "You could have opened a door," the girl said. The sheriff spoke at last, quieter than the hammer had been. "If you know where to dig, say it." The girl pointed to the far side of the foundation, the spot he never let himself face. "Right there," she said. "He says you'll find what makes you tell the truth." "And what makes me shut up?" the widow asked. "Nothing," the girl said. "It's too late for that." The widow picked up a loose nail and rolled it between her fingers like a coin she might bet and lose. She opened her hand and let it fall into the dirt. The deputy shifted. "You want me to bring a crew?" "No crew," the sheriff said. "Just a shovel." "I have one," the widow said. "I keep it by the back step." "Why?" the deputy asked. "For snakes," she said. She looked at the girl. "And ghosts that don't know when to leave a woman be." The girl didn't smile. "He says dig before dark," she said. "He says dark makes liars brave." The sheriff met the widow's eyes and found no mercy there, only a tired permission. "Bring it," he said. The widow walked along the fence toward her yard. The girl stepped after her. The sheriff stayed by the foundation, staring at the place the nail went down. He listened for the breathing the girl had promised. He heard only his own too fast, and the soft lift and fall of the hammer's echo still traveling the boards. Behind him, the deputy waited with his hat held close to his chest, like something borrowed and overdue. The town's whisper crawled along the porches, thin and sticky. The widow came back with a shovel, its handle smoothed by years. "It's bent," she said. "So am I," the sheriff said, and took it. "You want me to dig?" the widow asked. "I'll start," he said. The girl lifted her chin. "He hears you." "Then he'll hear this," the sheriff answered. He set the blade where she had pointed. The first press sank shallow, met something that wasn't stone, and came away black. The widow flinched and steadied. The deputy swallowed. The girl closed her eyes and listened as if to a voice near her ear. The sheriff put his weight on the handle and drove the shovel again. The moon gave little light. The sheriff carried the shovel on his shoulder and kept his boots low against the dirt road. He didn't want the town seeing him circle back to the lot. The burned ground waited the way it always did, wide and empty, yet never empty enough. He set the lantern down by the crooked fence, its glow stretching thin across the foundation stones. He pressed the shovel into the earth where the girl had pointed that afternoon. The soil cracked dry on top, but beneath was softer, darker, still carrying the taste of fire. He dug in steady strokes, each one louder in the night than he wished. "Sheriff," a voice whispered behind him. He spun, shovel lifted, but no one stood there. The fence creaked once in the night wind and then went still. He turned back and kept digging. Metal scraped. His shovel rang against something hard. He bent down, brushed dirt aside with his hand, and pulled up a nail, long and rusted, its head black with char. He turned it in his fingers. The edges cut his skin. He dropped it into the lantern light and stared. Another nail surfaced in the soil, then another. He set them in a small pile. Each one carried the stink of smoke as if it had never cooled. He dug faster. Sweat breaking through the night air was mild. A plank showed, blackened and half gone, still clinging to iron hinges. He pulled it up and set it beside the nails. The lantern flame flickered against it, showing the grain split by heat. He kept on, the shovel biting deeper. His breath grew loud. Then the blade caught on something stiff. He knelt, pushing dirt with both hands until a leather shape came clear. A boot. The sole cracked, the top burned but not gone. He pulled until it rose from the ash, heavy with soil. It was no stray scrap. Inside, the curve of bone pressed against the leather. His chest tightened. He held the boot in both hands. The lantern flame hissed like it felt the weight too. A sound moved behind him. Not the wind, not the fence. Breathing. Slow, ragged, close enough to warm his neck. He froze, boot still in his grip. "Who's there?" His voice sounded wrong in the open lot. No answer came. The breathing went on. He turned fast, shovel raised, lantern high. Empty ground, the fence, the road, nothing else. But the sound lingered, brushing his ear, as if whoever breathed stood inside the dark air itself. He set the boot down hard and stepped back. "Show yourself," he said. His hand shook on the shovel handle. A whisper reached him. It was not words he knew, but the tone carried blame. He felt it in his bones like a hand pressing his chest. He dropped the shovel, clutched at his shirt, and stared at the pile of nails. They looked like teeth laid out to dry. The boot shifted, just an inch, but it moved. He stumbled back until his shoulders hit the fence. The lantern shook in his hand. "Stop," he said. "Stay down." The breathing came closer. He thought he smelled hair singed by fire. He shut his eyes, told himself he was alone, told himself silence was stronger. When he opened them, the lantern flame bent sideways, as though pulled by a body passing. His mouth went dry. "What do you want?" he asked. A low knock came from the earth where he had dug. Once, twice, the rhythm of a man caged. He gripped the fence post until splinters cut him. "You're gone," he said. "You've been gone." The knock came again. He picked up the boot and shoved it back into the hole, shoveling dirt over it with his bare hands. The nails he buried too, fast and careless, until the soil covered all trace. His palms bled from the rust, his breath tearing out of him. "Stay down," he muttered. "Stay where you belong." When the ground was smoothed, the breathing slowed, fading like smoke drawn away. The lantern steadied. The lot fell quiet. The sheriff sank to his knees, staring at the patch of dirt he had just filled. He pressed his hand flat to it and waited. Nothing answered. He stood, lifted the shovel, and carried the lantern back toward the road. His boots left black prints in the dust. Behind him, the fence creaked once more. He didn't look back. Still, as he walked away, he swore he heard one last breath, drawn deep from under the earth, and it followed him all the way home. The sheriff sat in his office with his head low when the motorcar rolled into town. Its horn cut sharp through the quiet streets, a sound that didn't belong. He stepped to the window and saw two black coats climb out, shoes polished, hats stiff, faces pale against the dust. They didn't look at the townsfolk who stared from porches. They looked only at the burned lot. The deputy walked in. "You see them?" he asked. The sheriff nodded. "Capital men," the deputy said. "They don't come here for trade." They come for land, the sheriff muttered. The men crossed the road with no hurry, as if the ground already belonged to them. The taller one spoke first. Sheriff. His voice was clipped, practiced. We're here on behalf of the governor's office. The sheriff nodded once. That land, the tall man said, pointing at the scarred foundation, is property of the governor's family. Always has been. That land burned, the sheriff said. Don't make it less ours, the man replied. The shorter one smiled thin. We'll need you to keep folks from gathering here. Fires breed stories. Stories breed trouble. The sheriff's eyes narrowed. What kind of trouble? The kind that weakens order, the tall man said. The kind a governor can't allow. The girl stood barefoot at the ditch, dressed dirt-stained, watching them with steady eyes. She didn't blink. There she is, the short one said. Is that the child causing the talk? The tall man nodded. Yes. She's a child, the sheriff said. Children repeat things they don't understand. The girl raised her chin. I understand, she said. The tall man turned to her. You'll keep quiet from now on? No, she said. The short man's smile grew sharp. She thinks she can refuse. The sheriff stepped forward. She can, he said. You don't hold authority here. The tall man's gaze didn't waver. I hold the governor's word. Word doesn't plant seed, the sheriff said. Words don't feed families. The widow came walking slowly along the fence, hammer in hand. You men from the capital? She asked. We are, the tall one said. Then you should know, she said. This land doesn't welcome clean shoes. The short one sneered. Women ought to tend homes, not fences. She raised the hammer higher. My home burned in that barn. You want me quiet too. The tall man ignored her and looked back at the sheriff. The governor expects cooperation. He doesn't want unrest. The sheriff's jaw worked. Unrest already came the night that barn burned. The girl stepped closer to them, eyes fixed on the tall man. He's still inside, she said. The tall man stiffened. Don't start. He's breathing, she said. He said you locked the doors. Gasps moved through the small crowd that had gathered. The townsfolk shifted, whispering low. The short man snapped, Enough. He turned to the sheriff. Shut her up. The sheriff didn't move. His silence filled the space. The girl kept staring at the tall man. He said you carried the ledger. You took names and paid men to look away. The widow dropped the hammerhead into her palm. I remember a ledger, she said. Crossed out names. Whole families are written off like debts. The tall man's face twitched. Dangerous talk, he said. The sheriff finally spoke. Truth usually is. The short man stepped toward the girl. Last chance. You'll say nothing more. She looked up at him. I'll say it until he stops knocking. The deputy touched his gun. Don't. His voice cracked, but he held his ground. The sheriff watched the capital men, waiting. You're risking your post, the tall one told him. You swore an oath to the governor. The sheriff's hand went to his badge. I swore to keep order, not lies. The tall man lowered his voice. You keep talking like that. You'll hang with the rest. The sheriff's silence stretched long. Then he said, So be it. The widow laughed once, bitter. You men think fear is the only crop here. You forget we've been eating it for years. The short man's hand twitched near his coat. The sheriff's eyes caught it. Careful, he said. You draw in this town, you don't leave. The crowd thickened. Men with worn hats, women with tired eyes. They didn't speak loud, but their presence was enough. The girl took another step. He says the governor's name is carved on the door. He says, Ashes, remember. The tall man snapped. Quiet. She didn't blink. No. The sheriff felt something shift. A weight he'd carried alone spread out into the crowd. They weren't silent anymore, not the same silence. It was anger. The short man hissed. We'll return with more men. The widow raised the hammer. Bring them. Wood's cheap. Graves dig easily. The tall man stared at the sheriff. You'll regret this. The sheriff's voice came low. Already do. The capital men turned, stiff-backed, walking fast to their motor car. Dust lifted as the engine roared. They left without looking back. The girl stood at the foundation. He's glad they're gone, she said. The widow asked, He told you that? Yes, the girl said. He says more will come. The sheriff looked at the crowd. They looked back, waiting. He touched the badge on his chest and felt how heavy it had become. Then we'll be ready, he said. The widow set her hammer on her shoulder. The girl kept her eyes on the ash. The deputy whispered, "Sheriff, what now?" The sheriff didn't answer. He just kept watching the blackened ground, listening for the breathing only the girl admitted hearing, and the crowd waited with him, in a silence that was no longer fear, but something sharper. They waited with the sheriff. The burned lot held its stare. From the edge of the people, the school teacher stepped forward. She looked at the sheriff. The girl. "If they return, we cannot meet them with silence," she said. The sheriff's voice stayed low. "What did you bring?" "Something I kept when I should have handed it over," she said. The teacher unwrapped a cloth and showed a cracked leather ledger, corners black with old smoke. The girl's eyes fixed on it as if it breathed. "From the barn office," the teacher said. "I took it the morning after the fire when men argued over blame. I told myself it was for records, for taxes, for truth. I told myself wrong." The sheriff reached but did not touch. "Are you sure?" "Yes," she said. "Open it," the girl whispered. The teacher opened to neat lines of dates and names. Heat had bled the ink. Red lines crossed families. Beside some, in the same hard hand, 2 words sat like a stamp. "Debt paid." The deputy swallowed. "Paid with what?" The girl answered softly. "With breath." The sheriff's jaw tightened. "Read them." "I cannot unread them after," the teacher said. "Read." The girl repeated. The teacher spoke names. Parents, sons, daughters, neighbors. Each red mark cut the crowd a little. "Debt paid." She read again. The girl's whisper ran under it. "Bodies," she said. "They wrote debts, so they did not have to write bodies." The sheriff asked, "Who wrote it?" "A barn clerk," she said. "A copier." "Of orders. The governor's men gave numbers. The barn gave rooms. The town was silent. The deputy spoke fast. "We can use it. Take it to a judge." The teacher shut the book. "And then what?" "Men in clean shirts will seize it, write a new story, call this a lie, call me a liar, and burn us to keep their paper safe." The girl stepped closer. "He says the red is not ink," she said. "He says it is pigment mixed with ash and fat. He said the hand that wrote laughed." The widow shook her head. "Stop," she said. "Leave that talk out of the daylight." The teacher hugged the ledger. "This thing is a mouth," she said. "It talks whether we want it or not." The sheriff looked down the road where the motor car had gone. "They will come back," he said. "For this." "I know," the teacher said. "I kept it under the schoolhouse floor. I hear it at night, the way pages turn. I thought I held proof. Now I think proof holds us." The deputy looked between them. "So we hide it better." The teacher shook her head. "Number, we'll finish it." "How?" the widow asked. "We burn it," the teacher said. Murmurs rose and died. The sheriff stared. "You brought it to burn it." "I brought it so the truth walks out instead of being carried off," she said. The girl nodded. "Fire speaks here," she said. They moved to the schoolyard. The teacher set a basin on hard dirt and tore out a page. She held it to the sheriff. "Say the names." He did not move. The deputy read a short list in a cracked voice. The teacher struck a match. Flame curled the paper. The girl watched as if listening at a door. "Another," the teacher said. The sheriff took the next sheet and read slowly, then fed the fire. The widow pushed close and spoke one name under her breath until it was ash. The teacher kept tearing, kept lighting. Each sheet offered to someone to speak once before it burned. The deputy murmured between pages. "This destroys it. It frees it," she said. "They want one book to own the truth. We hand pieces to 100 mouths." She looked at the girl. "If he wants me to stop, say so." The girl shook her head. "He says do not stop. He says the door opens when words leave paper." Children drifted in and listened. Men stared at their boots and said names anyway. Women said names without asking leave. The fire ate steadily. The teacher's fingertips went black. The ledger grew thinner, lighter, almost gone. At the last leaves, the teacher paused. She looked at the sheriff. "This one has your mark," she said. He felt the ground tilt. "I never wrote." "There is a note," she said. "A key number by the side door." The girl spoke first. "He says you kept that key. He says you looked once, and then you looked away." The sheriff fed the page to Flame with a trembling hand. "I cannot go back to that night," he said. "No," the teacher said, "you can take this night." Only the cover remained. The teacher tipped the basin and stirred the soft black until pages lost shape. She smeared both palms and pressed them to a plank. "Now it is not theirs," she said. The widow did the same. The deputy too. The girl rubbed ash across her throat like a line she would not cross. Word beat the smoke. Names traveled faster than wheels or church bells. The school bell stayed silent and still rang in every chest. The sheriff stood with empty hands. He looked at the basin and then at the girl. "Is he quiet now?" "No," she said. "He's louder." "What does he want?" "He wants the rest to speak." The teacher faced the widow. "You were here," she said. "You know pieces I do not." The girl turned to her. "He says your fence will not hold." The widow raised her chin. "Then I will," she said. "I will hold." The sheriff stood in the widow's yard as the last light fell behind the trees. Her fence leaned crooked, hammer left on the rail where she dropped it. She sat on the porch with her hands folded in her lap, staring at nothing. The girl stood at the step, waiting. The deputy lingered by the gate, unwilling to step closer. The widow spoke first. "You want me to say it," she said. Her voice was thin, used up. The sheriff didn't move. "Say what?" "The part you all keep choking back," she said. The girl's eyes didn't blink. "He says you're ready." The widow's mouth tightened. "Maybe I am. Maybe it's time someone else carries the weight." The sheriff shifted his boots. "No one asked you to—" "Don't lie," she snapped. "They asked plenty. They asked me to cook when I heard screams. They asked me to pour water on my husband's back when smoke rolled. They asked me to sleep beside him while he smelled of fire." The deputy took a step. "Your husband built it." She turned her head slowly. "Every board, every beam, every door with chains. Not for animals, not for hay. He built it with money that never should have touched these hands." She opened her palms as if they still held ash. The sheriff said nothing. The widow's eyes watered, though her voice did not break. The night it burned, men were locked inside. They weren't strangers. They were neighbors, laborers. The governor's debts wore their faces. They cried. And we told ourselves the sound was timber breaking. The deputy's jaw shook. "Why didn't anyone—" "Because men told us to keep quiet," she cut in. "Because women were told to keep homes steady. Because survival was the only prayer that made sense. We didn't bury them. We left them screaming." The girl's voice came sharp and steady. "They're still screaming." The widow looked at her then, face hard as stone. "You hear them?" "Yes," the girl said. "They want light. They want their names." The sheriff's throat worked, but no words came. The widow looked back at him. "You. Remember," she said, "you were there with the key. You heard them pound." His silence pressed heavy. The deputy muttered, "God help us." The widow shook her head. "He doesn't come here. Not for this." The girl stepped onto the porch. "Why did you stay quiet?" The widow swallowed. "Because quiet meant my children ate. Because loud meant the governor's men came for us, too. Because I thought time would dull the sound." "Did it?" the girl asked. The widow lowered her eyes. "Number time sharpened it. I hear them in the nails, in the ground, in the breath of my sleep." The sheriff leaned on the porch post. "You could have told it years ago." "So could you," she shot back. "But you liked your badge too much." His jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. The girl asked, "Why confess now?" The widow closed her eyes. "Because silence doesn't protect anymore. It just rots us." The deputy whispered, "What if the Capitol men return?" The widow's laugh was bitter. "Let them. They already know. They only want us to be afraid to speak." The sheriff's voice came slow. "If we admit it, the town breaks." "It's already broken," the widow said. "You think folks don't know?" "They know. They just never heard one of us say it plain." The girl looked between them. "Say it plain now." The widow took a long breath. Her hands twisted in her lap. "My husband built the barn with blood money. He took their debts and sold their lives. He locked them in when orders came down. And when fire spread, he barred the doors. I stood in my yard and listened until their voices turned to smoke. Then I walked inside and laid down." The words hung like chains in the night. The sheriff's face was pale in the porch light. "And afterward." "We prayed," she said. "We shoveled ashes until we couldn't breathe. We pulled what bones we could and threw them deep in the lot. No graves, no markers, just dirt and silence. The deputy crossed himself. Lord, the girl didn't move. He says you left him there. The widow's voice cracked. We left all of them there. The girl said, that's why they knock. The sheriff pressed his hands to the railing. If the town hears this, they already do, the widow said. Every porch has ears. Every window tonight is open. The girl nodded. He wants them to listen. The widow's head bowed. Then let them. I'm tired of swallowing ghosts. The sheriff closed his eyes. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of keys burning against his chest. The girl stood taller on the porch, her voice steady. They're still screaming, and now we scream with them. He left the widow's porch with the girl's words still in his ears and walked straight to the office. Doors stood open along the street, faces in the gaps. He unlocked his door, went in, and shut it hard. Paper, dust, cold iron, he sat, leaned forward, pressed his palm to his chest. The badge burned through his shirt like a hot coin he could not put down. The walls began to murmur. He heard men hush each other, then cough, then call for air. The cells were empty. He had checked. He put both hands on the desk and spoke to the boards. Stop. The sound didn't stop. It moved in the door frame, along the stovepipe, across the window glass. He stood and paced, pulled the badge free, set it down. The tin carried a stain he didn't remember giving it. He tried to write. The pencil left one dark dot. He heard a breath behind him and didn't turn. I hear you, he said. I know. The stove clicked once. The boards creaked once. He swallowed. I kept order, he said. I did what I was told. A rasp slid along the wall. He couldn't make out words, only blame. The knock snapped the room. Sheriff! The deputy hit the door again. Open up. He grabbed the badge by habit and pulled the door wide. The deputy's face looked stripped. What? The girl's gone, the deputy said. She isn't at the widow's. She isn't at the school. Folks say she was taken. His stomach fell. When? Since dusk. Who saw her last? The teacher said the girl walked toward the lot. After that, nothing. You searched the alleys. Twice. The creek bed. Dry. He stepped onto the porch and found the street full, without a shout being raised. People gathered in clumps, eyes on him. Quiet, he said. The widow pushed through. Where is she? We don't know, he said. We'll find her. If those men took her, she said, bring her back. We don't know that. I do, she said. It smells like them. The teacher came fast, hair loose. I told her to go home, she said. She said she had to listen a lot one more time. I should have walked with her. It's not on you, he said. It's on all of us, she said. That book is ash, and still the story burns. He turned to the deputy. Rope the square. Post men at the road and bridge. Check the freight yard, the mill, the pasture beyond the tracks. Bring a lantern to the lot. Yes, Sheriff. They moved as one body. Boots scraped, skirts brushed, whispers rose. He crossed to the black foundation with the widow beside him. The deputy held up the lantern. The ash looked smooth, but the air was warm like a mouth had just closed over the ground. He crouched and laid his palm on the dirt. Heat met him. He pulled back. You feel that? The deputy asked. I do, the widow said. It isn't the sun. It's a breath, the sheriff said. A whisper rose from the ash, thin but close. He lowered his ear to the stones. A long exhale touched his cheek. You think she's under there? The deputy asked. No, he said. She's where the story wants her. Speak plain, the widow said. Well, he said, he would call from someplace else. The teacher's face went white. Behind the school. Go, he told the deputy. Run. The deputy ran. The crowd churned after him. The sheriff followed. The widow caught his sleeve. Trick. Truth, he said. Truth hides. Then find it, she said. They reached the schoolyard. The deputy knelt by the well, rope coiled, faces leaned over the stones. Quiet, the sheriff said. He put his ear to the rim. At first nothing, then a breath rising and falling inside the dark. Girl, he called. You down there. Silence, then faint. Here. Not deep. Lower the hook, he said. The deputy dropped it. Hold steady. The sheriff said, Take it, child. A small gasp. The rope went tight. Pull. They pulled. A hand came first, then hair, then the girl's face, ash smudged and calm. She reached the rim and did not climb out. "Up," the widow said. "Now." "Wait," the girl said. "Listen." He leaned closer. Behind her, in the dark, came a second breath, then more, a soft crowd of lungs. "He's not alone," she whispered. "Who else?" the teacher asked. "Them," the girl said. "All of them." The rope shook. The deputy swore. "We can't pull them all." "We pull her," the sheriff said. "The rest come up another way." The girl nodded. "He says that's right." "Move," the widow said, grabbing. The girl climbed out, feet to stone, hands to the sheriff's sleeves. She stood, thin and shaking. "They're angry," she said. "Good," the widow said. "So am I." The crowd pressed in. "Back," he said. "Give air." He looked at the girl. "Who put you down there?" "No one," she said. "He asked me to come. He wanted you to hear him where you couldn't deny it." "I heard," he said. "What did he say?" "He said your silence is a door," she replied. "He said doors can be opened or held shut." "And mine?" he asked. "Yours is moving," she said. A shout came from the street. "Cars!" A horn cut the dark. Headlights slid over the school wall. The town tightened. He took the badge from his pocket and pinned it on. It burned hot. He didn't flinch. He turned to the people. "Hold the line," he said. "No panic. We stand." "With what?" someone asked. "With each other," he said. "With the truth." The girl took his hand. "With him," she said. The well breathed out once more as the cars rolled closer and the town found its voice, and the night did not blink once. The night dragged heavy, the town holding its breath after the cars rolled past and vanished. Morning came gray, the schoolyard empty save for the girl. She sat on the lip of the old stone well, hair falling in her face, whispering into the dark. The sheriff slowed when he saw her, boots crunching gravel. The widow and deputy followed. "What are you doing here?" The widow asked. The girl didn't turn. "Talking." "To who?" The sheriff said. She pointed into the well. "Them." The deputy frowned. "There's nothing down there but mud." The girl shook her head. "Number they're waiting." The widow stepped closer. "Child, you stay away from that hole." "I can't," the girl said. "They need light. They need a voice." The sheriff moved to the stone rim. He looked down. The dark looked back, deep and slick. "You hear them?" "Yes," she said. "All night." The deputy bent down and spat. The sound vanished without a trace. "See," he said. "No bottom." The girl whispered again. Her lips barely moved. The sheriff leaned in. "What do they say?" "They say they were thrown here after," she said. "When the fire died, men filled the lot with some, but the rest went down here." The widow stiffened. "That's not true." The girl looked at her calm. "You know it is." The sheriff lowered his voice. "You sure?" She nodded. "They told me their names." The deputy snapped. "Don't feed this madness." "It's a hole, nothing else." The girl's eyes fixed on him. "Put your ear here." He scoffed, but the sheriff gestured. "Do it." The deputy crouched, leaned, listened. For a moment he smirked, then froze. He jerked back. "Sounded like—" He couldn't finish. "Like breathing," the girl said. The widow wrapped her arms tight around herself. "Number I won't hear it. I won't." The sheriff stood straight. "Get a rope." The deputy hesitated. "For what?" "We'll see how deep," the sheriff said. The widow hissed. "Don't you stir it." "It's already stirred," the sheriff said. The deputy fetched rope from the shed. He tied it to the bucket hook and dropped it down. It slid and slid, unraveling until the coil was gone. No tug, no sound, only dark. "How far?" the sheriff asked. The deputy shook his head. "Farther than it should." The girl whispered, "There is no bottom." The widow snapped. "Stop talking like that." "It's true," the girl said. The sheriff picked up a loose stone. He weighed it in his hand. "We'll test it." "Don't," the widow said. "Please." He looked at her. "We need to know." He dropped it. They leaned close. The stone fell, silent. They waited. 1 breath. 2. 10. No echo. Nothing. The deputy muttered, "Impossible." The girl said, "They caught it." "Catch what?" the sheriff asked. "The stones," she said. "The names. The silence." The widow backed away. "Enough. I won't stand here while you feed her madness." The sheriff didn't move. He stared into the well until his reflection blurred. He whispered quietly, "What do you want from us?" The girl answered, "To be remembered." The deputy rubbed his face. "What if this is just a trick of her mind?" The sheriff shook his head. "My mind hears it too." The widow turned, her voice raw. "You'll tear the town apart chasing ghosts." The girl looked up. "They'll tear it apart if we don't." The sheriff's jaw worked. "If they're down there, how do we bring them out?" The girl leaned forward, eyes dark as well. "You don't. You listen. You speak. You make sure the governor's men never bury them again." The deputy whispered, "What if they climb out?" The girl smiled faintly. "Then you'll know the truth without me." The sheriff straightened. His badge felt hot again, pressing into his chest. He turned to the widow. "You knew." Her lips trembled. "I prayed it was a rumor. I prayed the earth would seal it." The girl said, "Earth never seals what men do." The rope hung limp, swaying. The sheriff took it in hand. "We cover this." The girl shook her head. "You can't." The deputy muttered, "We should, before more people see." The sheriff stared at the well, the girl's small body perched on its edge, the dark that swallowed stone and sound. His voice came low, almost to himself. "No covering what won't be buried." The crowd gathered by the school fence, whispering. They had followed, hungry for answers. The widow saw them, closed her eyes. "Now the whole town hears." The girl stood. "Good, that's what they wanted." The sheriff met her gaze. "What do they want next?" She whispered, "Justice." The word carried over the yard like a bell, low and steady, impossible to unhear. Justice still hung over the schoolyard when the horn cut it. The sheriff turned as motor cars rolled over the rise, black coats inside, hats stiff, dust rising under their tires. His badge burned against his chest. The girl sat on the well rim and watched. The widow shouldered her shovel. The teacher stood tight as a post. The deputy whispered, "They're back." "I see them," the sheriff said. The cars stopped along the fence and doors flew open. Men stepped out like they expected the ground to bow. The tall one led. The short one kept his eyes on the girl. More suits climbed out with papers and clean boards. The tall one lifted a sheet so all could hear. "By order of the governor," he said, "this lot will be cleared and secured. The well will be sealed. The child will be taken for welfare review." The widow said, "No." He didn't look at her. "This is an order." The sheriff said, "Orders started this." The tall one smiled without warmth. "And orders will end it. Sheriff, enforce." Two suits moved toward the well, carrying boards and nails. The widow stepped into them. "Touch it," she said, "and I'll break your hands." The tall one lifted his chin. "Remove her." No deputy moved. The crowd pressed close without shouting. The short one touched his coat. The sheriff said, "Don't." The tall one pointed at the girl. "Take her." They reached. The teacher slid between them and the child. "She stays," she said. They grabbed it anyway. The widow swung once and cracked a wrist. The man yelped and fell back. A hiss went through the people like a match. "Unlawful assembly," the tall one barked. "Disperse." The sheriff raised his voice so the town could hear him, even the ones behind the windows. "We all knew," he said. The noise died clean. "We all let it burn. We smelled it. We heard it. We looked away. I was told to keep order. I kept it with my eyes closed." The tall one said, "Confession has a cost." "I'll pay for it," the sheriff said. "Not with that child." The girl slipped from the rim and stood by him. "They're listening," she said. "They want names." The teacher said the first. The widow said the following. A man from the mill said two more. The girl leaned to the well and spoke to each other in the dark. The sound that came back wasn't echoing. It was breathless, slow and steady, smoothing the day. The tall one took a half step back and forced himself forward again. "Tricks," he said. "Memory," the sheriff said. The short one waved at the cars. More men stepped out. "Arrest them," he shouted. Nobody moved. The deputy kept a hand on his belt and didn't reach for iron. "Draw," he said. "And you answer to me first." The tall one glared. "You'll be removed." The deputy surprised himself. "You can't remove what you didn't build." The sheriff unpinned his badge, looked at it, and pinned it again. "You think this is your chain," he said to the tall one. "Not today." The tall one nodded to a man with a nail gun. The hiss snapped the morning. Boards slid toward the well mouth. The widow planted her boots. "No." The sheriff lifted a hand. "Hold." The girl set both palms on the stone. "Listen," she said. The town went quiet. From below came the slow pull and push of breath, then a soft knock, then another. The noise climbed the stones and settled inside ribs. The suits went still, like men who had stepped into cold water. The tall one lunged and grabbed the girl's arm. The sheriff caught his wrist. "Let go." The man was wrenched. The deputy blocked him and held the space. The widow lifted the shovel to his throat and stopped just before skin. "Back," she said. He backed. The tall one trembled with anger. "Clear the lot," he said. The sheriff turned to the people. "Bring shovels." They came quick and steady, with garden tools and grave tools. The suits formed a line at the edge. The sheriff walked into it at a slow push until it bent. People poured past to the black foundation. The girl kept a hand on his sleeve like a rope. He set his shovel in the corner she had marked days ago and drove it down. Ash breathed warm around the blade. Others joined. Metal bit. Dirt rose. The tall one called for arrests again. None came. He called for help that did not arrive. He stood with a piece of paper and looked like a man holding rain in a jar. The first plank came up, black and hard. A coil of chain rose with it. A woman cried out and kept digging. The teacher read names under breath and did not stop. The widow lined rusted nails at the hole's edge like numbers finally counted. The girl crouched and listened. "Here," she said. The sheriff used his hands to clear a buckle and a scrap of cloth. He didn't stop. "We say them right," he told the ground. Dust coated mouths. Sweat ran. The sun hammered, and the town did not break. The tall one watched the day lean away from him. "You will answer for this," he said at last. "I am," the sheriff said, and lifted another plank. By afternoon, the hole widened and the heat in the ash settled like a tired breath. The cars idled, then went quiet, then idled again. The men made calls that went nowhere. The teacher paused to drink and then read more names. A boy brought water and stared like he had grown older in an hour. The widow didn't put the shovel down except to touch the girl's hair and make sure she was there. "Stop," the girl said when the sun slid to the roofs. The shovels paused. She walked to the center and set her palm on the ash. Her voice was plain. "They hear you now." The words went out without echo and pressed into the ground. The air cooled. A breeze found the lot. People let out breaths they hadn't known they held. The tall one tried again. "You invite unrest," he said. "There will be charges." The widow faced him. "Bring them here." The teacher said, "Bring papers." "We'll bring names." The deputy said, "Bring chains." "We'll bring shovels." The sheriff said, "No more sealed wells. No more hidden doors. If you touch the child, we fill your cars with our bodies." The short one stared and saw it was true. Dusk spread. Nobody cheered when the cars rolled backward, slow and stiff. Folks didn't wave. They watched with steady faces. The sheriff didn't call victory. He stood by the lot and listened to the breeze move across ash and stone. Night came. Porches filled. Lamps glowed. The sheriff stayed with the widow and the teacher and the deputy and the girl. The wind moved from the creek bed, across the schoolyard, over the empty foundation. In it rode voices, not screams. "Please do not modify it." A murmur like names laying down to rest. The widow whispered, "You hear it." "I do," the sheriff said. The teacher wiped her face. "What do we call it?" "Grief," the deputy said. "Justice," the widow said. The sheriff watched the girl. "Both," he said. The girl took his hand. "They want you to keep talking." "Then I will," he said. He turned to the people along the fence. "Tomorrow we will mark a lot. We set stones. We ring the bell and read names. We write what happened on walls no one can carry away. We tell the children so they can tell theirs. We do not clear this ground. We do not seal this well. We do not let anyone take the child who spoke." The widow squeezed his shoulder once. The teacher nodded. The deputy breathed even. The girl looked at the well and at the thin slice of sky. "They're quieter," she said. "Good," he said. "Let them rest while we make noise." The wind carried the voices down the road to the mill and past the store and along fence lines. It slid under doors and sat at tables and stood at beds. Folks lay awake and listened until sleep found who it could. The sheriff didn't go home. He stayed by the lot until the badge cooled and the sky thinned. He stood with the girl as dawn reached for the roofs. A bird called. The town was still and not. She touched the ash. "They know," she said. "They hear," he said. The widow lifted her hammer and set it across her shoulder. The teacher folded the empty cloth where the ledger had been. The deputy leaned on the shovel. The lot breathed like any field. The barn was gone. The fire was not. It burned quieter now, not with flames, but in the people who stayed, and they were ready to stand watch.